Thank you, Carolina. So welcome everyone today to this presentation. We are very excited about this. We will talk a lot about what is data and what value it brings to your organization. And we will give our introductions in a second once we start the presentation. But we really hope you're gonna enjoy, and let's start it. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead.
Should we start with Smartr?
Yeah, I think we should start with Smartr.
Right. So Carolina gave a good introduction to what we do, and I could just fill in some points here. So we help our clients. We're a consultancy agency, a specialist agency within data and AI. We help our customers to create value from data, and we do that by combining sort of business development, innovation, frequencies with analytics and also AI technology. So we blend these, and these are like in the mix of these three perspectives, we sort of solve these type of problems or enable these opportunities. We are 13 employees and have our offices at Vallgatan 3, and you're very, very welcome to just step by to have a good cup of coffee or just a chat or maybe a cake and bake some data. So that's around Smartr, I think.
And we really recommend coming to our office just because we are just by the Mateo. So every time when you're in our office, you really can smell the cinnamon buns. So it's a nice environment to be at, but it's also very risky for the health purposes.
All right, so my name is Viktor Olsbo. I'm the one of the original founders of Smartr. I have a background as an analyst and a mathematician. I spent some time at Chalmers and then 10 years at Volvo Finance Bank here in Gothenburg, working with everything, all aspects of innovating and creating value from data in that organization. And then 3 years ago, I was part of starting up Smartr. I'll hand over to you, Anna.
Yeah, so my name is Anna Hullert, and I've been working as a management consultant for 6 years. And a year back, I joined Smartr, where I work with data and data bakery that you will hear more about later on. So my background is one step in service design, one step in data and AI, and one step in finance. So I have a spread background. I hand over to you, Erika.
And I'm Erika Pauliukeviciute. So my last name is quite difficult, and that says that I'm from Lithuania. But after studying and working abroad for 7 years, I ended up here in Gothenburg. And I have my background in economics and business economics, and then I did some heavy lifting and I got masters in data science as well. So at Smartr, I also work with data visualizations and a lot with the data bakery. And today, as Anna said, you're gonna hear a lot about the data bakery and also like about data-driven organization. And yeah, just get ready, it's gonna be fun. So let's jump a little bit into the data bakery because our title says data bakery. So I guess a lot of you are wondering, so what is this data bakery? And so what it is, yeah, so in short, data bakery is a workshop style game, and the game is aimed to help you to kickstart your data-driven journey. So usually it's a very first step in allowing organizations or allowing people in organizations to organize the cares in their minds. And with the data bakery, we usually provide you with a structured plan of where and how to start when you want to become more data-driven. So this kind of idea came from dialogues and conversations we had like with managers and people who tried to work with data, but they did not manage to succeed, or like some projects failed. And we do really understand that working with AI, big applications, and big data is very difficult, is a very complex problem. So we decided to simplify this complexity. And we at Smartr created this framework to help organizations to start this data-driven journey. And this framework gives a chance to look at problems from various viewpoints and expand the understanding of the user, of the value added organization, and also always keep in mind the technical feasibility. So I really hope you're gonna enjoy this presentation. And so for today's agenda, we're gonna start with some topics in digitalization. Then we will look at data as an asset, as a competitive edge for your organization. Then we will dive into decision-making process and what are the struggles when we're making decisions. And also we'll look into the change. Is change hard or is change easy? And then we will look at the problems and discuss whether there are any solutions or not. And then we will introduce the data bakery. So as always, since we all on Zoom all the time, a quick interactive reminder. If you have a question, just write that question in the chat. We will look at all of the questions after the whole presentation during the Q&A. Don't forget to mute yourself, that we wouldn't get like distracted. And yeah, and just listen. So what is happening? Something big is happening, right? So this digital transformation is happening across the world. And in short terms, it's simply majority of the business are experiencing total transformation. And this transformation is the process of fundamentally changing the systems, the process, people, and technology as a whole business. And this transformation is changing because we want to achieve improvements in efficiency, effectiveness, and into stakeholder satisfaction. So this is one of the most critical drivers on how companies will continue to deliver value to their customers in a highly competitive and ever-changing business environment. So this transformation means moving your business from a traditional one to a digital one. And that digital business means that you start recognizing how your customers want to shop or browse or talk to you or buy from you, and also like now and in the future. So it means recognizing customer expectations from you and responding to them, and responding before your competitors do. So being up in the future or up in the things you do. But it also means learning from your interactions with your customers, and also rapidly adapting to optimize those interactions and gaining value from them. And in order to learn from those interactions, we need to start with data. So we have this enormous amounts of data that is available to us, and which to continue to be created at incredibly fast pace. So, and the amounts of this huge data that have now enabled the new revolution of data-driven processes and algorithms, such as AI. And AI has been recognized as the most central enablers of digital transformation in several industries. So compared to this new hype a few years ago, it might feel like not that much is happening, but there is. If we look around to the technology we use and other companies that are flourishing and how they act now, a pattern begins to appear. And that pattern is that with the help of digital data, a digital transformation is made possible. So transformation process seeks to leverage digital technologies to create or modify customer experiences and culture and business processes, thus meeting customers' changing needs on the market. And this is where also AI comes to play. It can help companies become more innovative, more flexible, and more adaptive than ever. So nowadays, data and AI are critical factors in the strategy for those who want to expand their business impact in the digital transformation journey. But data only makes sense if it's aligned with the processes and it can be seen as the company's competitive edge. But before we speak AI, we need to speak data. So do you speak data? So data is everywhere and everyone talks about data. And data, in short, is everything that is stored somewhere digitally or on paper. Everything that we perceive is data. So getting value from data is at the heart of any digital business transformation. But I think it's also extremely important to distinguish data from big data. So if you look at those images, the image on the left is not moving, and it's just like and that perfectly describes data. It's like an image. It can describe an event, place, image, feeling, just like a one specific point on time. But big data is dynamic data, is always changing data, is huge amounts of data. It describes behaviors, images, people on a global wide over time. Is the data where you can actually see the human behavior. It's more like a video. So the rise of big data has made the field very interesting for society, individuals, and organizations. And I think for organizations especially, because of the rise of big data, they can really increase their, they can really have the data as a competitive edge in ever increasing competition in today's market. So if this data is treated correctly, it can help for your business to understand better the desires of your customers, the market in which they operate, and also give you a lot of insights and give you an agile decision-making process. Viktor, you are muted.
Thank you. So as Erika described, the digitalization really turns data into a strategic asset. So in order to perform a digital transformation, you need to do this data transformation as well. And so, and then you need to treat it as an asset. And the question is, we talk a lot about data is the new oil, for example. That's a famous quote. So the question is, how do we actually treat it? And I guess that depends on how mature you are in your where you are on your maturity journey in your company regarding data and AI. But I think it's a good question to ask yourself is, who is actually responsible for your data assets? And if you like draw parallels to other strategic assets such as brand, the employees, technology, you have a clear stakeholder owner of those usually. So the brand is usually owned by its marketing and communication who handles that strategic asset. You have human resources or that type of department who handles the other strategic assets, the people at the company, and usually IT is responsible for technology. But this new asset data, it's not always as clear who actually is fully responsible for that. So in order to like get going in this transformation of your company, you really need to start from this point of view that data is truly strategic to you when you are either in or entering into a digital business model. Right, and we also talk about data-driven organizations. So what is that? So data and AI is, we can like treat it as almost the same thing, but AI is the refined version of data, I guess. So, but one part is to be data fueled, so that you collect, manage, and use data to create insights. But that's not all. To be like data driven, you need to use those insights to make well-informed decisions. So that's one part, and you need to do those two to be data-driven. But you can also be AI-powered, so you use these insights and data to create algorithms, but you also use these algorithms to automate or support complex decision-making. So a data-driven organization use these two perspectives. And if we look at the other perspective of being data-driven is that you use that in the whole organization. So if we take the next slide here, so it's important to take it in all dimensions. So either you're revenue focused, you're customer faced, you look at the customer experience, the products and services, or maybe your business model in general, or you can be more cost focused where you optimize your supply chain, internal processes, or decision and steering of the company. So it's important to have data, use it, refine it to algorithms, and also use it all over the company to become a data-driven organization. And it's proven to be have very positive impact, of course, in companies who are in the digital domain, but there are challenges as well. Erika.
Yeah, and there are a lot of challenges. From Smartr's experience, we really know that working with data, it is very hard. And no matter like on your maturity, like it is very hard to work, even though if we have a lot of experience, it's still very hard. It's a very complex issue. And so we took some statistics, data on data, and it says that 80% of business leaders say that general knowledge of data is a key factor for the company's success, but only 25% of employees feel comfortable in their computer skills. So this is also like lack of synergy. So they understand the value of data, but they lack the skills, the data literacy skills of knowing how to work with data. Another quote. So most companies only analyze 12% of the data they have. In other words, 88% of all the data remains unanalyzed. So it is extremely hard to know what data you need to use for your processes and work with data and try like to utilize it as your asset, as your core for digitalization processes. And we think and we believe and that's what we hear, everything boils down to decisions. Sometimes it's very hard to work with data because decisions are driving force before any action. And when we try to make decisions on how we should work with data, it boils down to many different categories that affects those decisions. And making decisions is hard. We are beaten by cognitive issues. We also have data issues. And also the lack of organization, the lack of organizational culture, all of these aspects affecting our decision-making process. And when decisions are affected from like so many different dimensions, we do have poor decisions. So when we see those data visualizations, those infographics that we have to base our decisions, but because that's so many dimensions making them so hard to decide whether what is good or what is bad, it makes sometimes the decision process very poor. And as a result, we have those poor decisions. So what is behind those making those poor decisions? So actually, one of them is the cognitive limitations. So our brain is a huge barrier when making decisions. So it's certainly true that the mind is a marvelous processor of information, and we would definitely be lost in the world without the hidden streams of calculations. But it's also true that our brain is actually an imperfect processor. So some scholars of human cognition have shown that our thinking is subject to all sorts of biases and flows, and of most of which are at subconscious level. So in other words, in intuition. So we naturally give more weight to information that confirms our assumptions and prejudice, for example, while dismissing information that would call them into question. So we don't always, in short, so we don't always approach problems in the most objective manner. So these are called cognitive bias. So I hope you heard this marvelous behavioral economist, Daniel Kahneman. So he wrote many books, but in one, Thinking Fast and Slow, he writes about human decision-making process. And he introduces two terms to describe our brain. So he introduces system 1 and system 2. So maybe you heard about it, but the system 1 is the brain's fast, automatic, intuitive approach. And system one activity includes the mental activities that we are born with, such as preparedness to perceive the world around us, recognize objects, orient attention, avoid losses, and like even fear things, like fear spiders. So other mental activities become fast and automatic through prolonged practice. And system 2 is our deep analytical system. So that's where the reason dominates. So usually system 2 activity is activated when we do something that does not come naturally and requires some sort of conscious mental effort. So this theory of system 1 and system 2 is incredibly useful as a way to understand the complexities of human decision making. So clearing up these myths and understanding this theory helps us to understand that the human mind is very complex. So when we make those decisions, sometimes we just turn system 1, and that's not always very right. It can be very biased. It can depend on a lot of backgrounds, a lot of experiences. So sometimes we cannot trust our brain. So, and that's also what a Century report says when we looked into how managers base their decisions in organizations. And still the main factor, it's intuition. So many organizations think that they are data-driven, but so intuition is still ruling. So a lot of people still believe and base their decisions on a gut feeling or experience rather than on data and information. And the reason for not using data as a basis for business decisions and manifold and range from having the necessary information available to thinking that instinctive decision-making is good enough. So, so there are problems in that. And also another problem is lack of culture, lack of cultivating this data-driven mindset, data-driven culture. And I also added like some slides. So for example, a lot of companies, the biggest problem facing companies who are trying to innovate and transform themselves with data is culture. We have always done in this way. So the lack of culture and the lack of cultivation of this culture can actually also really affect the decision-making process, because you want to have a culture which is very curious, which is critical about data, but also wants to change and wants to innovate. Also, like another quote we took like to emphasize the importance of culture is a data culture isn't just about deploying technology alone. It's about changing culture so that every organization, every team, and every individual is empowered to do great things because of the data at their fingertips. And when it comes to culture, so there's lack of data literacy. So this is another significant issue that many senior managers are facing. Maybe they are not data literate. So maybe it has been many years or decades since they took a statistics class. So this illiteracy is highly unfortunate, because the data literacy is defined, being illiterate is the final line of defense. And the managers are the ones that are taking this set of aggregated data and interpreting insights and findings from the analysts and evaluating the degree of evidence, risk, and impact is going to move the organization forward. And also lack of accountability. So when you combine the lack of data literacy with the lack of accountability, the combination can be deadly. So managers are not accountable for their decisions, and accountability in general should start at that analyst level, and they have to be honest about sizes, margins, errors, and confidence intervals, and make sure the decision makers understand. So there are a lot of issues, but cultivating the culture and learning and cultivating the data literacy importance is extremely important. And we have a lot of different people in our organization and culture. So I would like to ask a question. Which is the least data-driven animal in an organization? What do you think? You can write in the chat box. It can be quite hard question, but what do you think? Just write me a name of an animal, which you think is the least data-driven. I cannot see the chat box if someone is trying to message. So maybe Victor and Anna say if we have like any options there.
Yeah, we got one answer. I think it's snail. And then sengångare. I don't know how to say that in English. Victor, help me.
I'm kind of lost there as well. So it's, maybe someone in the audience now. So all right, should we just
Turtle.
Yeah. There's another. So have you heard about it before? So the least data-driven animal is HiPPO, the highest paid person's opinion. So you all know them. They are the experts with decades of experience, but they don't really care what the data says, especially when the data is wrong, and they're still going to stick to their plan because they know the best. So Financial Times wrote this great quote explaining the HiPPOs. So HiPPOs can be deadly for business because they base their decisions on ill-understood metrics at best or on pure guesswork, with no intelligent tools to derive meaning from the full spectrum of customer interactions and evaluate the how, when, and where, and why behind actions. The HiPPO approach can be crippling for business. So an organization can have quality, timely, and relevant data and skilled analysts to do great work and generate masterful reports and models with carefully crafted and presented skills and recommendations, presented insights and recommendations. However, if the report sits on a desk or unopened in an inbox and the decision maker has already made up his mind what action he's going to take regardless of what the data shows, it's not very good. So as much as organizations try to think that they are data-driven, intuition still rules the roost. So we always have to be aware of HiPPOs and know that they exist and cultivate this critical mindset. And also, as another huge thing is data. So of course, when we're making those decisions, the human errors come into play. The culture comes into play, but also it boils down to data and the potential issues with data. So data has to be timely, it has to be relevant, it has to be trustworthy. So what are some potential issues with data? So data quality. So data quality is extremely important. And I added a picture on the right that you would imagine that as a pastry as well. So when we try to make a pastry, we need the flour, eggs, and all these different ingredients. We need to make sure that these ingredients are in a very high quality before we actually try to make an end product with it. So that's exactly the same with data. The data quality, the accuracy, the completeness of data is extremely important. And then volume. So the volume of data, the sheer volume of data, a lot of organizations have struggles keeping up with this volume. So for others is not the lack of data, but the opposite, like this volumes of data. And it is very hard, and that also gives a lot of limitations of harvesting these huge swaths of data. So without a clear plan or sufficient toolkit for this analysis, and volume presents other issues. So when we have a huge amounts of data, the more you data collect, the more signal you get. And along with that, we gather more noise. And when we have a lot of noise, it becomes harder and harder to figure out what is truly relevant, and the amount of relevant data will become diluted, and it's hard for analysts to determine the signal from the noise. So as you can see, the data-driven decision-making is only partly about data, it's also about the human errors and also about the organization. And it's extremely important, like, to take into all of these dimensions when we think about it, and be aware of that, because once we're aware of that, we can start making some change.
Yeah, so we have one dimension that we talked about where it's hard to actually make well-informed decisions a lot of times, both as a human but also in an organization, and when you have the data perspective there, as well as Erika said. So just some short notes on another important dimension. So if you're not data-driven, you need to become data-driven, and then you are in a process of change, and change is hard. So it's very important to also remember that people are reluctant to change. And becoming data-driven means that most people needs to change their way of work, but not only that, they need to get updated or new competencies and skills. So it's very important to have this in mind when you do the transformation, of course. Take the next slide here. And this then boils down to like the soul of the company, and not just the company culture, but the leadership culture. What type of leadership that you actually deploy at your company, and that will also affect this transformation, of course. And a lot of companies want to have, of course, high alignment and high autonomy they say that at least, but that means like changing sometimes the actual core of the company culture. And and this is the classic case, just a misalignment. Even if you know where you're headed or what problem you're solving or opportunity you're enabling, it's important to have good communication and make sure that everybody knows the how, so you don't end up with 50-50 solutions as this one. And just another reminder is, even though you make these great things, when you come up with the data-driven, AI-powered solutions, which are fantastic, fun, and very interesting, everyone else who's not part of that is actually busy. So when you remember that you need to make people ready and open to change when you come and present your things. So the relationship building with the organization is very important. And just also in that, remember that everybody has their different perspectives. So you can look at the board of directors, the middle management, and the actual performer. They can have different incentives to change. Whether directors of the company really think that this is highly important and it's a no-brainer that we should do that. But when you come down to the people who works with this, they don't have the same incentives, and they could actually get more work or no work at all when you do the change. So always remember that you need to have everybody aligned in this. Yeah, so when everybody's aligned and have the same like incentives to change and no barriers to change, then everything is better. And just remember that you need to interact with the stakeholders at every level, or the actors at every level, maybe in different ways. So when we talk about change, it's important to remember that it's humans or people that we are working with. So I think this is a great quote. So the secret to AI is people. And we should always remember that, even though that we talk a lot about data and technology, to actually do this, we need to create solutions that people use or want to use. And that will be the decisive factor to if you succeed or not. Right, so Anna.
Yeah, how do we approach this? So we heard that it's complex and it is hard to combine all these perspectives and to see how can we actually both kickstart data-driven innovation and also work within in our own organization. And just as that quote from Victor's slide said, that we need to create human-centered and technology-powered tools to create financial performance that touches on each different perspective. So if we see that organizations have 3 different families, we have those focusing on the designer perspective, like customer centered experts. They are thinking, who is our customer and how can we work with personas and customer journeys and just understand the customer. Then we have the business people in the business family who think of what's the revenue in this and how can we set a strategic plan for this. Then we have the data family that thinks of, okay, zeros and ones, algorithms, machine learning, and we need to find a way where we can combine all these different perspectives. So if you take the next slide, we need to enable that we can create a joint view from all these different perspectives. So much good conversations are going on in separate rooms. How can we get all these in the same room and have a holistic approach of what is going on to align those different perspectives? And also create a common language that data has a different meaning for different people. So how can we make data easy to understand for a non-tech person, since we already seen that data is central for all different perspectives. We need to work with it in the whole organization. So how can we create a common language and identify and engage the right people to democratize the dialogue in this? And of course, we also need to ensure that we bring value in what we do. So just as Victor mentioned, we don't just do cool tech stuff for tech's sakes, or we just do things because we think the customer wants that. We need to see that it aligns with the organization, with the value, and it's technical feasible. So how do we approach this? Born out of service design principles, we wanted to create a tool to get these cross-functional teams to actually get in the same room and understand each other's perspectives. So we based it on service design principles, that it's human-centered, that we always think of who's the human, both the customer, but also internally, who are our co-workers and stakeholders. And we wanted something that is co-creative, so people can work together in a collaborative manner. And of course, something that is tangible. These are complex things and it's hard to grasp this. So we wanted something that is actually easy to just, here's a thing that we can touch on, that we can just hand over to someone else and they can understand it. And of course, the holistic approach. So we see that everything connects together. So you've probably seen this data value chain where we see data as single spots. It's no use. We need to make information from that data that brings out knowledge and then insights, where we go from to wisdom to impact. So that's the line where we go from raw data to impact. And seeing data, you already heard our metaphor for it. Seeing data as our ingredients helps us to think like an egg, a raw egg isn't that good in its own. But if you combine it with sugar and milk and flour, you kind of start baking something from that data that can be good tasting and consumable. So if you know what ingredients you have or what ingredients you need from outside, you can start mix and blend that. And you also need to see, okay, do we have those tools and skills in-house, or do we need to get them from someone else? How can we bake this so it becomes good information? And also, even if you made the perfect cake, you need to think of who is your guest, who is going to eat this, what's their are they super hungry? So we need to reveal their hunger instead of just making some delicious cake for them. So we need to understand who is our guests, and also need to see how can we make benefit of this. Will it increase the relationship with our customer, or will it save money or make money? So here's we get the whole perspective and all the different perspectives into one phase. So we developed, if you take the next slide, we developed a framework that we call the data bakery. And it's a metaphor to see your organization as a bakery. So it doesn't matter where you start, and people tend to start from where they are most comfortable. But just to explain this framework, I will start from the bottom. So data sources, where do we store our data? What enterprise resource planning system do we have? What CRM systems do we have? Or do we get data from outside? You see the car there. So maybe we need weather data. Okay, we get that from higlhy, for example. And we'll look at what data do we need for making our products and services, or for this concept that we're going to build. So you look at what data do we have and just map that out in a nice and easy way. And then the next level, tools and skills and process, looks at what tools and skills do we need for this, and do we have them? How do we move from information to action? And then the business case, how will we serve this? How will we make money or save money on this? What's the value in this? And the value proposition, who is our customers? What pains and gains and jobs to be done do they have? And the core of the business, what's our product? What are the products and services or the concepts that we are coming up with? What are the baked goods that we're delivering from our bakery? And we have the roof, the business context, both the culture, what are limiting our business, even if we have like so many good ideas, we need to have a culture where it's okay to be testing and learning while doing. And what core values do we have? So we align with our main business perspective, so we don't forget that. And then we have my favorite part, the chimney. So especially when talking about AI, what is leaking out to the outer world? What is affecting others? It's a super important part of the bakery, both the GDPR, but also the ethic as perspective of the whole thing. So when seeing this canvas, we get to ideate and brainstorm and just fill this bakery with good things. And there's never lack of ideas when we're doing these workshops. And even it's either filled with digital Post-it notes or physical Post-it notes. But as I said before, we wanted something tangible from this. So how can we extract this in a nice way so we can package it up so it's easy to understand? So the answer is the recipe card, where we extract the information and we clearly describe our idea. We set the status for it. Who is this for? What allergies do we have? What tools and skills? What's the revenue streams and key activities for these? And what's our shopping list or ingredients for this? So here's an example how it can look like after a workshop where we have created the recipe card. And if you take the next image, Erika, you see that when we have created those cards, we have small, well-described concepts, easy to hand over to a colleague of yours that wasn't in this workshop. So then we did an impact effort matrix to see what recipe is maybe easiest to start with or most valuable for us to start with, and what could be very complex and hard and doesn't bring that much value. So we always evaluate what insight we get from this workshop. So what comes after when we have a lot of recipe cards? Of course, we need to package them into a cookbook. So the whole process of a data bakery workshop is that we start with ideation. We just come up with all the ideas we have. Then we validate those through desirability, viability, feasibility. We package them into recipe cards where we evaluate each card, and then we package it into a cookbook with our added recommendations for this. So if you take the next slide, Erika. I will just shortly, I know we're running out of time, I will just shortly describe what other companies done. We've been playing this for many times now, but I will just give 3 quick examples. So in March, we played with a region that wanted to see yeah, they just wanted to see what can we do with the towards working more with AI and data-driven decision-making. And they identified the need of a growth generator. So they were able to track and predict and cluster organizations depending on the need of support from this hub in this region. And actually it's a 10 weeks development project right now where we are part of it together with some students from Mittuniversitetet. And they are developing this tool for making smart decisions. And we got a really nice quote from one of the participants who said, Data Bakery's method is the embodiment of Coco Chanel's quote that simplicity is the keynote of all true elegance. And as true elegance, Data Bakery is for all seasons. And that's what we aim for, make so complex and hard things easy to grasp and easy and simple. You can take the next slide, Erika. So we played with a startup. It's actually now a scale up rather. And just by having this conversation with people that are not that into data, one woman said that, oh, I wish I had this data, then I could be more accurate with my customers. And another person in that company said, but I have that data. So just by raising that communication in the same room, low-hanging fruit, we just share the data we already have. And another nice quote from that was, I highly recommend Data Bakery to any organizations that want to boost their cross-functional capability and start taking advantage of data distributed across different systems for whatever priority you have, operational efficiency or new data-driven products and services. So it's very fun to be part of these workshops because it's so much good energy and so much good outputs from this. And if you take the next slide, we played it with another company that is a global leader in that branch. And they identified a purchase prediction forecast. So they already collected that data, but they were actually guessing, okay, so how much are we going to buy in that will be sold next season, for example. And that's like a guesswork where we have that data, we can actually make well-informed decisions about that and be more accurate and both be more sustainable, but also it benefits economically. So that was identified as a low-hanging fruit. So they could actually start developing that. So we can take the next slide. And I will actually hand over to you, Erika, again, and you will wrap this up.
Yeah, so right now you heard a lot about data and the value of data gives to your organization. And we would like to invite you to this workshop, which will be on 25th of November. We have limited spots as we will try to give as much facilitation to each of the group, but we invite you to actually put your hands on and experience this data bakery and actually come up with the concepts that can help you to kickstart your data-driven organization or add something valuable to it. So it's going to be a 3 hours workshop where we will talk and introduce you a little bit more about the data. We will put you in that perspective, and then we will facilitate you throughout the whole process. In the best case scenario, you come with your own colleagues from your own company, because then you can focus on those specific goals or on that specific theme within your department, within your team that you want to work on and you want to improve. But of course, you can come as alone, and then we will assign you to the team with people who came alone as well, and just experience and get your hands on and just see how it works. And we will send the link to register. And I really, really recommend, because usually we do with individual companies, but right now we want to do it as an open workshop. So I don't think we're going to have a lot of spots. So first come, first serve basis. So we will share the link in the chat for the workshop. But I personally really recommend, because the excitement and the joy people feel and how they express after the workshop is just it's fun. It's fun for us and it's fun for other people. So yeah, so this is the workshop. So I think we're going to have around 25 spots. But overall, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you really understood what makes sometimes those data-driven decisions hard, how data is the competitive edge for your organization, and how the data bakery can help solve at least a small part of this issue to help you to kickstart your data-driven journey. So thank you for listening today, and I hope you had a good start of the morning.